Rare earths become a geopolitical battleground. China's controls shake global rare earth supply. US-China strike fragile rare earth truce. Europe demands stability amid rare earth chaos. Nations race to build non-China supply.
Hello and welcome. You're watching another episode of Explained with me, Thomas Porteous. Let's get straight into it. From the motor that spins your electric car to the tiny magnet that keeps your smartphone running, there is a group of metals called rare earth elements that quietly power much of your modern life. But lately, these rare earth metals have become part of headline news everywhere. And it is not because they have suddenly appeared into the picture. Records tell us that these elements have been used for industrial purposes since the late 19th century. The rare earth elements are in talks because one country controls most of their world's refining and processing capacity, and that country has now put new limits on what it will export. These moves have sparked a string of urgent talks between Beijing, Washington and Brussels, and even led to a high-level meeting between the Chinese President Xi Jinping and, of course, US President Donald Trump, ahead of the APEC summit just last month. In this episode of Explained, we will talk about what these metals are, why China matters so much, and what Beijing has changed in its export policies in regard to these, and how the US and Europe have responded to it. But first, what exactly are these rare earths? They are a family of 17 metallic elements, mostly lanthanides, plus scandium and yttrium. They're used to make high-performance magnets, catalysts, and many other components that go into consumer electronics, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and certain defense systems. Despite the name, these elements are not uniformly rare in the Earth's crust. The real challenge lies in extracting and, crucially, refining them into usable, high-purity metals and alloys. The refining step is technically complex, capital-intensive, and also environmentally demanding, which is why the control of the processing capacity matters as much as or more than the raw mining. So understanding where those refining facilities are located helps explain today's geopolitical tensions. And that leads us to the next question, which is, how did China come to dominate this industry in the first place? Now, China's dominance has developed over decades. Beginning in the 1900s and accelerating in the 2000s, Chinese firms slowly and steadily built out the full chain value, consisting of mining, separation, refining, and magnet production. These firms have been backed by large investments and have had fewer environmental and regulatory constraints because refining is technically hard and costly. Many miners outside China still rely on Chinese refiners to get industrial-grade materials. This has made China a practical choke point for the global supply chain. In short, other countries may dig rare earth ore from the ground, but China has long been the place where ore becomes the precise metals that global industry needs. That structural lead is the reason why recent policy changes in Beijing has caused a big wave of international trade and security conversations. This year, one of the key policy shifts announced by Beijing came on April the 4th, when China's Ministry of Commerce and the General Administration of Customs unveiled significant changes aimed at streamlining trade and customs procedures. This announcement marks a notable shift in China's approach to international trade and economic management. The new policies are expected to enhance efficiency, improve market access, and further integrate China into the global economic system. By simplifying regulations and facilitating smoother customs processes, The move is seen as part of Beijing's broader strategy to attract foreign investment and maintain steady economic growth amid a challenging global landscape. As part of the new policy changes announced on April the 4th, China added 7 medium and heavy rare earth elements to its export control list. These include samarium, gadolinium, teferium, diprosium, lutetium, scandium, and in any transactions involving these systems. The move is seen as part of China's broader strategy to tighten global control over the critical resources that play a vital role in global technology and manufacturing industries. Then on October the 9th, Beijing moved again, expanding the export control list. The ministry added 5 more elements, which included holmium, erbium, thulium, europium, and ytterbium. This brought the total number of restricted rare earth elements to 12. Moreover, China thus has become the year which witnessed Washington and Beijing moving from confrontation to a series of carefully negotiated understandings. Let's take a look at every key agreement in the exact order that they happened. The United States and China reached their first significant understanding on rare earths in late June of this year, following several rounds of trade discussions. Both governments confirmed that China would speed up export licenses for American companies. Although it wasn't a removal of restrictions, it was surely a commitment to faster processing, especially for US end users in electronics, automotive and defense manufacturing. Within weeks, the impact was visible. In June itself, China's exports of rare earth magnets to the US jumped by 660% compared with May. Analysts linked that surge directly to %. US President Trump later described the conversation as a, quote, 12 out of 10, and added that the rare earth issue was settled temporarily. Now, a few days later, Beijing finally moved to 426. Now at the 2026. But interestingly, even under the new general licenses, every significant shipment still depends on Chinese approval, which means uncertainty remains for high-tech industries in the US. Safe to say, it is a relief for the United States, but not permanence. As for now, the United States and China were working out temporary arrangements on rare earths. Europe was closely watching the situation with growing concern. Right after the first set of controls came into effect, senior EU officials began warning that Europe could be entering an alarming situation. Now, in early June this year, EU Trade Commissioner Markus Šefčovič said that European industries ranging from electric vehicles to wind turbine makers were exposed in a way that demanded immediate engagement with Beijing. The European Parliament echoed that urgency, and so on July the 4th, lawmakers passed a resolution calling on China to avoid restrictive or coercive export behaviour, clearly stressing that Europe's economic security depended on stable access to these materials. Last month, Commissioner Šefčovič criticised China's licensing demands as, quote, unprocessable. He complained that European firms were being asked for excessively detailed documentation, which took into account everything from high-resolution factory photographs to deep supply chain disclosures. And although Europe submitted nearly 2,000 applications, only around half have been approved. For European Union officials, this signalled a system that was too slow and too uncertain for industries that depend on predictable material flow. China, meanwhile, defended its rules. Foreign Minister Wang Yi argued that the export curbs were simply standard controls for dual-use goods and insisted that legitimate European needs could be met, provided applications were complete, of course. However, just a few days back came the most important development. Brussels and Beijing announced the creation of a special channel for European rare earth export licenses. Under this arrangement, European applications would be given priority treatment and processed more quickly. Now, Commissioner Šefčovič has called this new channel essential to help the factories in Europe functioning smoothly. This deal, however, has not removed China's export rules and also doesn't guarantee automatic approvals. But it does give European firms a dedicated lane where delays could be flagged and resolved before they hit production lines. Alongside these negotiations, the European Commission has been pushing for domestic rare earth and magnet production projects. This includes new facilities in countries like Estonia and also expanding recycling programs across the bloc. EU's Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has framed this shift as part of Europe's broader economic security strategy, basing on the idea that Europe cannot rely on any single supplier for critical minerals, no matter how cooperative the relationship looks in current times. With China tightening its grip on rare earth exports, not only the EU bloc, but countries around the world are racing to build alternatives. This entails refining, recycling and even deep-sea extraction in addition to mining. In Australia, companies like Iluka Resources is working with partners in Africa, particularly from Malawi, to import rare earth feedstock for a new refinery located in the western part of the country. Now over in the Americas, Brazil is emerging as a new contender. Enova Mining is developing multiple rare earth projects in Brazilian regions such as Minas Gerais and Sao Paulo. It potentially is looking at downstream processing that can easily plug into international supply chains. Similarly, in Canada, governments and companies are backing new capacity to realign rare earth processing outside China. If we talk about joint strategies, Japan and the European Union are reportedly discussing a public-private rare earth procurement channel to bypass Chinese dominance. Now, in another development, G7 nations, including the US, Canada, Japan and Europe, have pushed for a critical minerals alliance to ensure reliable non-Chinese sources of rare earths. Ultimately, this goal is to rush to diversify supply chains and build strategic alliances isn't just economics. It's a geopolitical contest, and the countries that secure rare earth stability today won't just participate in the future of clean tech, defense, and the green economy. They'll own it. Well, that's all that we have time for here on Explained. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
Rare earths become a geopolitical battleground. China's controls shake global rare earth supply. US-China strike fragile rare earth truce. Europe demands stability amid rare earth chaos. Nations race to build non-China supply.